Hello and welcome to Talking Reds, a not so new Nottingham Forest podcast hosted by myself, Greg Oram, and fellow Forest fan, not from across the Atlantic, but actually in the motherland of the United Kingdom, at home for the first time in 33 years, live from the UK. It's Richard Spray.
Yes.
We stood up.
I wanted to play the whole thing, but I thought the intro that we needed for your visit or your return to the UK was could only be God Save the King. Welcome back to the motherland. Richard, how are you, sir?
I'm doing so good. It's absolutely amazing to be here. So glad. And to be on the same time zone as you guys.
You're actually currently in Wales visiting a family, so I could have played Land of Our Fathers, but I couldn't quite bring myself. We are delighted to be back after a short break, and there's loads to catch up on. So we'll pick apart the opening day draw at home to Bournemouth last week, because we haven't done any of that. We'll dissect the latest transfer comings and goings, and we'll look ahead to our first away day of the season coming up this afternoon as the Reds travel to newly promoted Southampton at St Mary's Stadium. Joining us to delve into all of that, and we're delighted to welcome him back, it's Danscape. How you doing, Dan?
Yeah, good, thank you. Good. Looking forward to it.
Excellent. Right, well, let's get straight into it. So, we've only managed to kind of get together now because I've been on holiday, and Richard, you've obviously flown over from the States to be here. We were hoping to go live the other night, but that couldn't happen. So we're here now, finally, to kind of get into some Forest chat. Now the season's underway. Feels like we're kind of well behind all the other podcasts who've been doing brilliant work. I've been managing to catch some stuff that they've been doing. So let's get our own slant on Bournemouth. The first game of the season. This time last week, I was in America myself, so I couldn't see the game, and I was trying to follow everything that was happening, and it was super exciting. So straight in, what did we make of the team selection for the first game of the season last week? There were none of the new signings were starting. What did you think, Richard, when you saw the team line up for that game?
Yeah, I think an initial reaction was just simply, where's Milinkovic? Obviously, I hadn't scrolled through X yet to get caught up on what the situation was with him, but initially disappointed just because I wanted to see how he was going to play in his first Premier League match. That was obviously not due to anything that they could control, unfortunately. Overall, pretty much anticipated what they put out there on the field. Wasn't shocked by any measure by what was there. Obviously, the big, most glaring, disappointing moment was when Danilo went down with an injury. But in terms of team selection, I was not surprised whatsoever.
What did you think, Dan?
No, I mean, that's exactly the team I would have probably picked anyway. I think I was always edging towards Bolly over Milinkovic for these first few games, just to carry on from the good end of last season. So yeah, it was sort of a surprise that he wasn't in the squad at all. But overall, the team selection was what I expected. I think it's only Anderson that I think is really pushing for a starting place.
So the injury to Danilo, which 15 or 16 minutes in or something like that, we've all seen it. Looks nasty. We wish him well. He's going to be missed. But how much of a miss will he be, Dan? Are we well stocked in the midfield? Are we going to rue that Danilo injury?
I think on the basis that he was the plan A. He was regular under Nuno last season and this season. Clearly fancied him as probably the most consistent midfielder in there. So in that way, we're going to miss him definitely. We have got, though, luckily, some very good quality players to back him up, be it Yates, be it Dominguez, or be it Anderson. So yeah, definitely well stocked to cover it. But a big disappointment, obviously, for me, because I picked him as player of the season as well. So 8 minutes in or whatever it was, game over on that one.
Yeah, I mean, it's always devastating. I mean, he's a great lad. He's always smiling. It's been well documented, and everyone's talking about him as a person. So no one's ever going to want to see any player go down like that. But yeah, as Raf says in the comments, Yates, he came in and smashed it. So a word on Ryan Yates. I mean, he can never be written off, can he, Richard? I mean, I'm a big Ryan Yates fan. He's just signed a new contract. He is the club captain now. He came off the bench, and maybe that was a surprise to some. Maybe they thought, well, look, if Danilo's going off, then this is the Elliot Anderson situation to get him on the pitch. But Ryan Yates comes on board. I mean, I never saw the game. I've seen the highlights. But everyone's talking on X. Oh, but look at Ryan Yates. He's marauding forward. He's making these runs and really impressing. What did you think when he came off the bench to step in for Danilo, Rich?
Oh, 100%. I was a little bit surprised at the initial, when he came out. But what you see, what he did, and the way he galvanizes things, the way he kind of gets people organized, the way that he's just got such a great temperament in the way that he manages things. And so, and he's, he doesn't have the highest ceiling in terms of his talent or his quality, but what he brings is a consistency that we needed, and especially in that moment where given the circumstances. And so I thought, we didn't lose any momentum when he came on, surprisingly, considering, like, again, that floor to ceiling differential compared to a Danilo or compared to an Anderson. But yeah, I thought he played brilliantly. As you stated, he played progressive. He sort of continued the same form he had in preseason, where he was really trying to be more front foot. He was trying to get into the final third more often. Just played sound football for the entirety of that match. And like I said, brought some stability to the moment. So appreciated his efforts and the way that the team played once he came on. But we, again, was very surprised that it wasn't Anderson that was preferred in that moment. But at the same time, I'm sure, as Dan kind of alluded to, they're going to continue to work him in because the talent is clear.
Yeah, I mean, we seem to dominate the ball in the first 45 minutes. The chances seem to be more ours than Bournemouth. Take us through our goal then, Dan. Chris Wood stepping up again. What kind of season can we expect from him, and how crucial is he going to be to Forest this season?
Yeah, classic Chris Wood goal. Smart little, he sort of delayed his charge into the box just enough to stay on side, which is exactly the kind of player he is. It's those little details that he gets right as to why he gets the goals, even though he can be out of the game for a little while. So I think he's still going to play enough games for us to get 10 goals, and they're probably going to be those important goals like that one, fine margin games where we just need either him to come off the bench and do it, or to give us a lead to hold on to. So yeah, it's a good start for him. And, although we're talking about transfer options up front, he's still going to have a role to play, even off the pitch, obviously, with his experience. Yeah.
I've seen the goal back, as we all have, several times, and I was quite impressed with. He was also part of the link-up play, so Yates and he and Elanga are passing the ball really well. Yates making those runs. One thing about Ryan Yates, I guess, it's all well and good and being this kind of swashbuckling player, and as Raf has said in the comments as well, he was very much the kind of Ryan Yates of the promotion year, with that box-crushing impact that he can be a box-to-box player. But Ryan's finishing, or his shots, can sometimes leave a lot to be desired, and that was possibly evident a few times. So that shot comes in, and obviously Neto spills it into Chris Wood's path. So it's finished off as the poacher that Chris Woods is. I agree with you. I think he's still going to have a big part to play this season, and it was great to see him picking up straight away with a goal on the opening day for us, with Tyrone Awoniyi on the bench, still probably a month away from what we can class as full fitness. So 1-0 to Forest, looking good. And then they scored a goal that was ruled out for offside, Rich. So I thought this was a bit of a let-off because it was absolutely marginal. I mean, it was offside. It wasn't a goal, and that's that. But it was so marginal that on another day, just another inch onside, we're back to 1-1. And it looked like the defence got completely carved open and Forest were exposed again. How much do we need to keep an eye on that back line away at Southampton today?
I mean, they've got attacking threats, right, with Adam Armstrong, who is one of the top goal scorers in the championship last year. Ben Brereton Diaz, I mean, I'm basing this off of at least one appearance that he had against us, which he seemed to kind of dominate that final third. And when he got in the box, he was kind of a nightmare to deal with. Yeah, there was just isolated moments, even though we kept possession, even though we seemed to be dominating in that first half. There were isolated moments that ultimately you could see where it was going to lead to a lot more pressing, a lot more attacking minded Bournemouth in the second half, which is what we saw. But to your point, it seemed like there were certainly moments where we had errant passes. We seemed to give them an opportunity to counter really quickly. You know, some of that was, you know, just due to, I think, a little bit of a, I don't know, discombobulated sort of situation from the get-go. But at the same time, it does worry me a little bit that we still seem to have shades of issues that existed in the previous 2 years, where there was a lack of consistency in play. There was, you know, moments of mental lapses that lead to goals or lead to, you know, potential goals. And that play, I mean, the build-up play on that was beautiful. And I think that was off a set piece as well, wasn't it? If I remember correctly, I think it was a corner. So once again, we're dealing with something in that same vein. So yeah, I mean, that was the part where I kind of looked at the overall, you know, comprehensively, the way the match played out. That first half and second half were stark contrast. And it felt like the first half seemed like more of the preseason Forest, the one that we kind of start to see develop and evolve through the end of last year. And then the second half was the one that we don't like to see. That was the one that suddenly manifests itself again. And so it did create sort of some momentum that you can see built up towards the actual goal that counted for Bournemouth. And it was coming. I mean, even I think those who were commentating said the same thing. It's coming. It was coming, you know, so they could see that we were starting to slowly erode in terms of playing good defense. So
typical Forest, Dan, can't hold a lead. It wasn't a defeat on opening day. So we're in our third season back in the Premier League. Season 1 and season 2, we were away from home and took no points. So home to Bournemouth, a game that in our pre-season predictor, we all agreed we would pick up the 3 points, but it ended up a draw. So a point, is it a good point, Dan? And how much should we read into us conceding late again to have that lead snatched away from us?
Yeah, I wouldn't have taken a point before the game. I definitely, you know, wanted to go into that thinking we were going to win, get all 3 points, and you know, have a comfortable performance because our pre-season's been so consistent, and they obviously lost Solanke and things like that. It just felt like a game we should be able to win. It was a scrappy game at the end of the day. It wasn't sort of brilliant from either team. So I'm not reading too much into it. I think obviously the injury in the first half, and just the first half was completely disrupted by that and a few other stoppages for the VAR checks and things like that. So I think that disrupted a bit of our momentum. I think the subs in the second half that we were sort of forced to make with Elanga and Aina going off definitely disrupted our momentum and made us weaker at the back to some extent, a little bit more disjointed, a little bit less organised at the back. So I think that contributed to them getting the equaliser and to them dominating the latter part of the game. The goal itself, you know, frustrating because it's a cross, as we've seen so often, not dealing with that. Sells probably not commanding that 6-yard area to come out and collect it, which when I rewatched the extended highlights on YouTube, at like 5.5 minutes in, there's a chance exactly the same before it, and he comes out and he jumps on the ball, and you know there's no threat at all. But as for that one, he's pinned to his near post, and it allows the ball across, and then Toffolo sort of makes the wrong decision in which way he's going to clear it or just leave it to sort of run through and dummy the defender. So frustrating end to the game, definitely. But yeah, let's assume that it's kind of just as warming up to our best.
I've seen Sells getting a bit of flack, and I watched it and I thought that was possibly a bit harsh for the goal, but because these things happen really quickly, the ball comes over and you've literally got a split, not even a split second, you've got tenths of seconds to make that decision to either come for it, and if you don't come in that moment, then you got to stay where you are. And the ball's coming over quickly, especially as you know that it's coming to one of your defenders. As a goalkeeper, you're more inclined to stay because you can see Toffolo think, well, he's going to clear it. So if I'm going to come out, I could possibly get in the way of this and end up spilling the ball and push it out, and so on. And the fact that he possibly never comes across this wasn't a cross, it was a ball into the box. So I can understand why he didn't try and come out to claim it, because Toffolo was there to clear it. And then
it's
it
just
was
that
just
starting position. So all I'd,
well,
I mean, that then makes the decision easier. That's where I'm coming from, I think.
Yeah, I hear you. I think it was just a comedy of errors when Toff clears it. It hits Murillo in the head and obviously spills to their player. Raf wants to point out that when we did our preseason predictor, he was pretty sure that he had it down for a draw. That may well be true. So yes, Raf, you did say draw, but we also went with the general consensus. So we went with a win, which we didn't get, but it is a point on the board, and we are hopefully on track for a mid-table finish. So let's see how that transpires. So look, a point on the board. Looking at the other games in the Premier League, there were heavy defeats. A heavy defeat for Everton. They didn't want to get off, certainly, to a 3-0 defeat to Brighton. So, we are stuck in mid-table after one game, which means absolutely nothing. We know that. We know that it means nothing. But a point is better than none. I'm feeling optimistic that, we managed to see the game out. It was a bit of a funny first half, as you say. That injury to Danilo certainly would have upset the apple cart. And I'm hoping that today we can get ourselves off and running with our first away win of the season. Okay, so we'll talk more about Southampton shortly. But first, I want to touch on the transfer news. So all this week, it's been Nketiah or Jimenez. And on Wednesday, we were due to come on and do this episode. And at that point, it was very much one reporter was talking about that Forest were Nketiah and it was all being tied up. And Fabrizio Romano was talking about the fact that we were really trying to tie up the deal for Jimenez. And it was very confusing as to which one we were actually going to try and sign. Well, since then, it turns out that it's more likely to be Nketiah. Personal terms have been agreed with him, apparently, and it's now just a case of tying up the deal with Arsenal. I had hoped, as I'm sure you two would have as well, that this deal would have been sewn up by now. Richard, Eddie Nketiah, your thoughts on him coming to the City ground to add to our firepower?
Yeah, he's an interesting. I think Dan was the one who was saying it stylistically. He's very different than what we currently have, right? So you wonder how that's going to fit within the overall tactical plan, just because he doesn't play the way that Taiwo plays. He doesn't play the way that Wood plays. They're a bit more traditional number nines. He's got pace, but when you think about what that looks like with Morgan and with two other pacey, especially Elanga wingers, I mean, that's a pretty formidable front. He's young. I mean, he's 25 years old. But for whatever reason, he just hasn't gotten an opportunity to start. There have been stretches. He certainly has a pretty decent, goal to, perform or goal ratio basically for the amount of time he's played. So he can definitely score. I mean, I think he scored a hat trick against us, right? I don't remember if that was last year or the year before. So he's the pedigree and the talent's there. It's just a question of whether he can do it consistently. And so it'll be interesting to see how if that deal gets over the line, how they weave him in, given what we've been doing with the other two guys to this point. And so, as Dan pointed out as well, I mean, there's no doubt those other two are going to play a part. But with Taiwo's fitness still in question, it's good to have some youth. It's good to have some, a change of pace, if you want to call it that, come in and provide a different look. Once again, with Nuno just having these options, right, and being able to kind of change up formationally, change up tactically, based off of the personnel that he has at his disposal. But exciting nonetheless, because it definitely seems like he has the potential to really, maybe have his best season if he's given enough time.
Thoughts on Nketiah, Dan? Does he come to be the number one striker?
Yeah, I think so. I think he becomes the striker that we're pinning our hopes on over the next 3 to 4 years to progresses to obviously where the owners and people want us to be in that top half. So I think you can, that's what we'll be signing him for. We're not signing him just to slightly improve what we've got now. I think we're signing him to build around in that front line. We still need the other option of Taiwo or Wood or someone a little bit more physical for certain games. But for our go-to, especially at home, games like, where we're going to get that extra bit of possession, We need someone who's slightly better at close control on the ball, take it in tight situations, spot a pass as another option, as opposed to just kind of battering ram, I think.
Can you understand some of the fans, or not just some of the fans, it's almost like a 50-50 split, feeling that Nketiah isn't a good signing for Forest? Because I'm fully in favour of it personally. I think it could be a great signing. And had this signing been right at the start of the window, let's say going back 3 or 4 weeks when we were all crying out for a striker, which has only grown louder, I kind of feel like had we gone for Nketiah right at the start of the window and got him in, then people would have just been falling over themselves, completely thrilled to bits with it. But it feels like the longer it's gone on and the more people have been looking at signings and looking at players and then obviously comparing him to Jimenez, Eddie Nketiah, in some people's eyes, isn't the right fit. People are talking about the amount of minutes he's played over the seasons. And actually, if you look at his stats, and I know, Dan, you are always looking at these kind of things. No, his stats do hold up really, really well. The amount of starts he's had, the amount of minutes he's played, the amount of goals he's scored, all stacks up really, really well. And so I think of the likes of Anthony Elanga, I think of Callum Hudson-Odoi, those two players who have come from big clubs previously in Man United and Chelsea, respectively, who weren't getting runs in the side, who clearly had the talent. Give them a run in the side, and you can see what happens. Give them the chance to build their confidence. And Eddie has done that for Arsenal. He's come in at different times over the last couple of seasons and had a run and scored goals instantly. So can you understand, Dan, first, then I'll come to you, Richard. Can you understand why people might have doubts about Nketiah?
No, to be honest. I think the difference is that when we got linked to Jimenez, it was, it's that exotic signing. We don't really know. He could be average or he could be this world-class player that we discover, and it goes on to great things. And so there's that little bit of hope there. Whereas Nketiah, people know about him. They know that he's not been the first choice for Arsenal. He's not got 20 goals in a season. So there's that reason to sort of doubt him and question him. The reason I prefer it, and I always prefer the signings of players that are coming from, better Premier League clubs than us, is that they are used to not just match day, not just in games. They're used to the whole thing that comes with Premier League football. They train every day with, against top defenders. They're used to the physicality of it. They're used to the little things like the gym work, the analysis. All that stuff is there to the level of the Premier League, to the style of the Premier League. So I think he brings all that with him to us rather than a gamble as to someone else. So that's, my view.
I think you're right in terms of the assimilation factor as well. If you've got an English player who has been playing for a Premier League club, he knows a lot of the players. I mean, he's going to know some of the younger players at Forest already, because I think he's played with them perhaps at the under 21 level. So he's gonna, if he comes to us, and it's still not done yet, so let's not get too carried away. We hope it will be done, and I hope he's done very, very soon. But his assimilation is going to be far, far easier and far, far more straightforward. Bearing in mind that we have signed in our transfer window activity so far, Ramon Sosa, who's going to come in and need to be assimilated and need to adapt in the same way that Jota Silva has to do that, in the same way that Carlos Miguel is going to have to do that. And also, even though he's more experienced, Nikola Milenkovic. These are players that haven't played in the Premier League before, and we are expecting good things from Milenkovic, but he still needs to settle. I mean, I think, it's a hunch, it's a guess, but on everything I know about him, he looks like he's the type of player that can slot straight in. But again, we just don't know. So signing in Nketiah, who has scored goals in the Premier League for what has been a top 2 team in the last couple of seasons, to me just seems a no-brainer. And Jimenez, it's like you say, it's the fancy, glitzy, exotic name, but it does bring with it just that level of doubt. There's no doubt that he's a good player, but Feyenoord in the Dutch league is a completely different proposition to Arsenal in the Premier League. Any doubts for you at all, Richard, with Eddie Nketiah?
I probably got caught up and enamored with the stats, right? So the stats will automatically tell you that he's worth bringing in based off of when he has logged playing time, as Raf kind of alluded to in the comments. I think where I probably drifted where I was doubting, the validity of that signing for us as to whether that's really going to work out was simply based off the fact that, Jimenez had played far more minutes, scored more goals comparatively, but and it was more to do that sort of understanding of, or that lack of awareness or understanding as to what is Arsenal not seeing in this guy that they would want to prioritize him. That why did they not value him for some reason? I think it's probably not as difficult a question to answer when you're looking at teams like Manchester City or Arsenal, those kind of clubs, because that there's just so much, they're so replete with talent, and they're obviously going to bring in the best talent out of Europe or other places of the world. And so it's not that shocking to me that he maybe got sort of dropped on the pecking order, as it were. But he certainly played for England under 21. I think he logged at least one cap for England, right? Or one appearance for England, senior squad. So I think there's a lot to like about him. And I think I'll give Dan a lot of credit because I think we'll now shift and call Dan the resident Stato. But at the same time, he's made some great comments through our WhatsApp group about just when you look at the totality of who he is as a player, there's a lot to be excited about. And so that kind of shifted me away from like worrying about what is Arsenal not seeing in this guy to want to keep him around, because they were looking to sell him right at the beginning of the window. And I think they were almost going to sell him right to Marseille, if I remember correctly. So he definitely was one player that was sought after. So that's a good sign as well. And from everything I've seen with a guy, I don't have any fear that he's going to assimilate. I think he's going to be a great asset moving forward. And he's still in the prime of his career and can offer a lot to our team. And I think knowing what he came from and having, as Dan pointed out, that awareness of what a highly successful Premier club looks like, you can't undervalue what he understands about a culture of a place like that, and how the good things that they do can be sort of brought in the way that he can sort of help us sort of continue to progress is a good thing as well, on top of the talent he possesses physically.
I think as well that you have to remember that he is a young player that's come through the Arsenal youth system. So there's always that PSR factor. All the teams have to factor that in. So when you're looking at players that you are going to select, there comes a time when you have to make some money. And Eddie Nketiah, no doubt, is highly valued by Arsenal. He's not going to have made first team appearances for them in their title challenging efforts in the last couple of seasons if he's not a good player. So I don't think it's that they haven't seen something in him, but I think they also have to look at the bigger picture and think, well, look, this is a guy that we can make instant profit from. So moving him on in the same way that United moved Elanga on, he came through their youth system as well.
Newcastle with Anderson. Yeah,
exactly. And you look at Anthony Elanga come to Forest last season and having a good season. There were times when he came off the ball a bit, but he had a very good season. And there were Man United fans that were asking the question, why have we sold Anthony Elanga and kept hold of Anthony as their winger option? And almost pining for what they've moved on. And it probably comes down to the same thing as well. Anthony Elanga's not getting the minutes that he wants. He is an asset that's going to bring in good money in the same way that Nketiah is. So I think that will definitely come into the whole story as well. I think
as a transfer strategy, obviously the exciting bit we were all excited about recently is the South American market and bringing those players in for good value. But I'm more excited, like you've pointed out there, we've kind of got a strategy on the side, which is let's take the academy players off of the top teams because they need the money for PSR. Let's delve into that market. And that for me is a more exciting recruitment strategy than the sort of gambling option from South America.
It is, because you look at these players as well that have come in. I mean, if we think back to when we were a championship team, and that's not that long ago, and someone said to me, look, in a few years' time, you're going to be signing players from Arsenal, from Chelsea, from Manchester United. We even signed from Omar Richardson from Bayern Munich. Now, I know that hasn't worked out, sadly, but we're still bringing in top young players from these so-called top 6 clubs and looking to grow our squad in the right way. So it is a mix of overseas talent and hidden gems like your Murillos and your Danilos as well. One player that has come in with experience on loan for the season is a player that we have coveted previously. We tried to sign him on 2 or 3 occasions, and that's Alex Moreno from Aston Villa. So he's going to come in and be a left back option for us. I'm excited about him coming in. Richard, how do you feel about Alex Moreno adding to our left back options at Forest?
Yeah, I think the experience factor, he certainly hasn't played as many games recently. I think he averages 13 starts over the last 3 seasons. But at the same time, he's got pace. He's got the capacity to even score goals and produce assists, even in limited playing time. I think he's played for Spain, if I'm not mistaken. So he brings a lot of experience to the table. And by all means, based off of what I think that Villa fans have said, he's a tremendous person as well in terms of what he brings to the dressing room. And that's one thing we always seem to say about Toffolo, right? Is that he's just this great guy who provides good leadership and provides great mentorship, I think, even for younger players. But from a quality standpoint, doesn't quite have it. Whereas Moreno probably does have that and has shown that. And so I'm not quite sure. I didn't notice or even find anything. Maybe you guys know about maybe where he's been injured recently, quite frequently. But I think he fits the way that Nuno wants to play, especially with the way he manages his wing backs. So from an advancing up the pitch standpoint, from putting pressure on the back on the other opposing team's defensive line, I think he's going to be great. His defensive statistics actually don't look that bad either. I mean, it's not what he's best at. But at the same time, I think it's exciting to see somebody come in that I know we've been trying to get in for 2 years now. And so he seems like he's anxious and excited to be with the club as well, which is always a good thing. So I think, totality, he fits what we need right now.
I got a message from an Aston Villa friend of mine, Alex Gibber, if he's listening. How you doing, mate? He texts me first thing on Thursday morning. You signed my favourite Villa player. And I said, oh, don't worry, we'll look after him. And he said, I'm reading the message now. He says, I love him. I'm gutted he's gone. A handsome, swashbuckling, marauding fullback. Hope he does really well for you. And he's been touted as the Felipe replacement because he has that exotic Spanish handsome face. I think beyond that, he is a good player. That overlap that I think are going to need at times with Callum Hudson-Odoi. We know Hudson-Odoi's trick is to come in and shoot on his right foot, but having that overlap from the likes of Moreno, I think is going to be really important for us, Dan. And I think his experience could be a really good key factor for us. I think I said in the group the other night that, if we're going to have him at left back with Bolly or Milenkovic and their experience alongside Murillo, who still needs to develop still. And he's a great player, but he still is inexperienced. And then our right back option is going to be Aina or Williams or even Eric Da Silva Moreira if he gets game time. So I feel like the Moreno signing, Dan, is a really quality addition. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's a really key piece of our jigsaw for the season is to have a natural left back that we can rely on. Hopefully, that's the only question mark is on his fitness coming back from a hamstring injury. So I think he's a quality player. I think attacking wise, he's a really good player. Really up there as an attacking fullback, which at home we will certainly rely on. We saw it last season, West Ham, where we beat them 2-0. That was probably Nuno Tavares' best game. He seemed to really dominate that left side, get forward, get back, do everything. Still made some dodgy decisions in the final third to shoot or do something over the top. But hopefully Moreno's a little bit smarter in that respect. But I just think we need the balance, like you say, whether it's to facilitate Hudson-Odoi cutting inside, just give the right back of the opposition team something else to worry about. Like, where's he going to go? He's a threat as well, so I need to really cover, obviously, the threat down the line, the cross into the box, and that will free up some space for other players inside. And it just gives us an out as well. Obviously, we can play down that side now. Even if we're under pressure, at least you've got a left footer there that's going to knock the ball down the line more accurately. Just little things like that. I think it's a key signing for us to have more balance.
Yeah, other Villa fans have been, not crying out in disappointment that he's gone, but certainly they absolutely rate him. They've signed Maatsen as their left back option, and so there comes a time when you've perhaps got too many players in the same position. And he was Unai Emery's first signing at Villa, which goes to show that he obviously does rate him. So I'm pleased that he's fine at the City Ground. You know, we tried to sign him when we had that Omar Richards debacle and the broken leg that we missed. And then we were like trying to scout another left back before we signed Renan Lodi. We were looking to try and get Moreno in, and it looked like he was coming. And then he made that statement where he decided to turn us down and stay at Betis. And that's fine. And then ended up at Villa, I think, in the following window. So he's here now. He's only just turned 31. So he's not old. You know, he's experienced. Everything you guys have said about him being another option for us, I think he's coming to start. I think he's not coming to sit on the bench. I think he's going to be the starting left back, and Williams and Aina are going to have to battle it out for that right back slot. So let's see how that transpires. We talked about centre back options quite a lot in pre-season, and one name that came up in our conversations, Richard, was David Carmo, who spent last season on loan to Olympiacos. I'm not sure if there's any truth in this rumour, but it's flying about social media that we are looking to sign David Carmo and bring him to Nottingham Forest, albeit to instantly loan him out to Olympiacos. Now, some people do get very upset about this aspect. Oh, why are we doing this? And it's going to affect our PSR. I'm absolutely certain that the club wouldn't be doing anything that's going to jeopardize the PSR. Now we've really kind of straightened ourselves out. I think all eyes are on those figures. So bringing in David Carmo to loan to Olympiacos for a season, in my eyes, would be great business, because he is a good player, Richard, who we really like. And if he's our player in a year's time, and let's face it, we thought Murillo would go this summer, and if he has anything like the season he had last year, then it's highly likely that Murillo would be out the door at the end of this season we're in now. So having David Carmo on the books could be really good. Thoughts on David Carmo coming to Forest and then to Olympiacos, mate?
Yeah, we looked at him, I think, early on, you and I, Greg, when we were concerned about center backs, because we were all assuming as the season concluded and we started the offseason that Murillo was gone, right? To solve our PSR woes, we needed him, either him or Morgan Gibbs-White, to leave for significant money, which obviously didn't happen, which is good. But at the same time, Carmo's a guy that physical profile-wise fits everything that they've been looking at. He's 6'5". But what I like about him is he provides a little bit more athleticism than the other two guys that are that same height and physical profile, which of course is Dan's favorite, Bali, and then Milenkovic. So it'd be interesting pairing him, and he definitely is more progressive with the ball at his feet. He's fantastic aerially. So from that standpoint, he provides another big body to try to prevent potential set piece goals or balls in the box coming into the box and through the air. There's nothing you can say that you that would make this seem like there's a significant downside, other than just sort of fitting into that narrative of people that don't like you mentioned, Greg, of sort of bringing in players through Forest and then immediately sending them out to Olympiacos, which I know that there's rumors going around that Jota Silva might do the same things. They might do the same thing with him. So I know that's frustrating, but to your point, if they're able to do that, I think he's a great potential option to slot in. Even if we lose a Murillo, let's say a January window or next season, you've got another option who's, again, young. I think is he 24, 25, somewhere in that range. So he still fits the mold of what we've been looking at all off season as well. So nothing but good things in my mind in terms of having him potentially come in and be a part of that on loan sort of mode of operating.
Raf says in the comments that there is a chance that it's going to change again and he goes straight to Olympiacos after all. So we'll keep an eye on that. You know, ultimately, good player, could come into the Marinakis empire of sorts. Let's see what happens in the final few days of the window. One player that has left us, Dan, finally departing the City Ground after many, many years of service. Joe Worrell has joined Burnley. A word on Joe?
Yeah, great send-off, social media send-off. Great words from him in particular, talking about the club and his time here, and giving a very rounded view of his time here and what it's been like for him, which is highs and lows. I'm sure when he first came into the team, it was just kind of a basket case of a club, playing with some players that were, not interested in being here and things like that, and he stood out. And then obviously he's achieved what he's achieved the day at Wembley. Just, incredible. That's what we would all dream of as kids, is to kind of captain your club and take him to Wembley, take it to the Premier League, keep us up in the Premier League as well. possibly a harder achievement in terms of the football on the pitch. So yeah, all around kind of. I've been frustrated in the last 6 months as to try and understand why he's not more involved for us, why he's not a backup option. But it sounds like he wants to go and play, which is obviously fair enough. You sort of want players like that, but obviously you're not going to keep players like that if you're bringing in someone who is another step up in quality. So yeah, wish him all the best at Burnley for this season. Probably not next season if they do get promoted and they're playing us. But yeah, best of luck to him.
Yeah, we can't begrudge him the move. It's sad that a player like Joe can't get decent game time at Forest, but ultimately we are in the results business, and we are in the business of trying to stay in the Premier League, and ultimately we have to trust the manager and the managers that come and their selections. And I think Joe's place in our history and at the club is forever undiminished. He should be held really, really highly. He will always be one of our own, without a shadow of a doubt. And we can only just wish him nothing but the very, very best. He wore that Burnley shirt for his presentation, and it looked a little bit odd to see him in a different shirt. And, ultimately, that's how football goes sometimes. He would have never wanted to have left Forest, but ultimately, as you say, he wants game time. And so we wish him nothing but the very, very best, and hope that he doesn't come back to haunt us next season at the City Ground. Hope that you're enjoying this. If you could take a moment to like the video and maybe subscribe as well. We are still trying to push our numbers up a little bit. We're ever so grateful for you joining us. If you're watching, maybe you're on the way to the match on one of the coaches, or maybe not, maybe sat at home somewhere in the UK or elsewhere in the world. We thank you for joining us and tuning in. Liking and subscribing does do us a bit of a favor, so hopefully you can help us along with that. Right, let's take a look at the big game coming up this afternoon. Southampton. Previous visit in season 1 was our only away win of that season. It was a 1-0 win. Brennan Johnson cross for a Wanyita sweep at home. And, Saints themselves got off to a 1-0 defeat away at Newcastle last Saturday. Newcastle were down to 10 men after only 28 minutes when Fabian Schär put his face into Ben Brereton Diaz's face. And sure enough, Diaz went down like he'd been shot, and was showing a red card. I mean, I guess ultimately you have to be really careful. You do. You can't go putting your face in like that. You're going to get shown a red card more often than not. They've come up through the playoffs. They've been touted as immediate relegation candidates. How much truth is in that, Richard? Is it lazy just to write Southampton off?
They've got some guys in their squad still with Premier League experience, so it's not like they don't understand what it's like to be there. I just think from a talent standpoint, front to back, I don't know if they have enough collectively to be able to win week in and week out, or even accumulate enough points to be there. They didn't make a lot of big moves in the offseason. So I think it's perfectly reasonable to think that they're a candidate, especially considering, as you mentioned, they came into, not that we don't understand this because we did the same thing, but we didn't have players who had a lot of Premier League experience on our squad either. So, and had been in the Premier League prior to that recently. So I definitely think they're one of the three that's most at risk for going down for sure.
What do you think, Dan?
Yeah, I think Southampton are one of those teams that play a style of football where you need some of the top players in the league to do it, particularly up front, because they play with possession. They like to hold on to the ball, but you need the quality in that last bit of the game to actually turn that into goals. Otherwise, you're not going to get anywhere. So, especially in the Premier League, where teams are just going to hit you on the break, and the quality is already there with 10 plus teams that are always going to do that to you. So yeah, I think it's, as it stands right now, candidates for relegation, unless they go out and spend like 50 million and find a striker or someone who's going to guarantee getting them 15 goals.
Who are their danger men? What do we know about them? How they're going to cause us problems today, Dan or Richard? Either of you? Go on.
Rich, go ahead.
Go ahead. Well, I was just going to say, I mean, the first guy that comes to mind just because of of his performance, and he's a very consistent player, is Adam Armstrong. Brereton just seems to, for lack of better, I mean, based off of how he handled the Fabian Schär moment, he's got some antics behind him, and he likes to get in your head a little bit, right? So he plays the mind game a little bit more. But Adam Armstrong's a very solid player, so that's probably one that we seem to have challenges with. Cameron Archer when he played for Sheffield United as well. So he's a bit of a thorn in our side. Kyle Walker-Peters is still there, who's kind of an electric player. So and he played very well against us 2 years ago. He was a real challenge for us as well, coming down that right side. So there's definitely some players there that can be difficult. Yeah, I don't know. Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, I suppose I had a quick look through, the style of play that they had in the Championship, whether that's backed up by the stats. Obviously, people say that they've got a certain style of play, but the stats back it up in terms of, they had 2,000 more passes than any other team in the Championship. The next team down had 2,000 passes less across the same games. They don't pass it long. The stats show that they had the lowest or second lowest long passes. So they play in that way that we can expect. They have the possession, so there's a threat there because they're just going to hold on to the ball, but they are just really weak defensively. They conceded a lot of goals for the position they ended up in the league, and that's their downfall, is they don't seem to have the physicality. They don't seem to tackle and get the ball back enough. The threat that stood out for me is Brereton Diaz, because he's kind of new to them. So he's high energy. He'll contribute to what they do, which is try and press high up the pitch and win the ball back high up the pitch. But he's not a finisher, really. We saw that in that Sheffield United game. He had a couple of chances that he should have probably scored or laid off to someone else. He still makes those final decisions on there. He's more of a attacking midfielder than he is a striker for me. So yeah, he's a threat because of his mobility. We saw him drag Bolly out of position in that Sheffield United game, kind of isolate Bolly where he didn't want to be with too much space behind, and he's a threat because of his movement, but overall as a team, their defensive weakness is there. So I think there could be goals in it, because we obviously know we've got a bit of a defensive weakness ourselves. But we can talk about lineups in a bit and how you approach the game, I guess.
Well, yeah, I was literally about to say, Dan, how are we lining up for this one? Is it going to be the same team except Yates for Danilo to start, do you think?
Yeah, I tried to look at a way, like, would I go to a back three? Is there any argument for trying to change things so that we've got a different way of playing that gives us the resolve away from home to get a clean sheet? We're desperate for a clean sheet. 188 days or 189 days today since we've had a clean sheet, which is the second worst in the Premier League as it stands. So, we've got a problem there since Nuno's come in that we can't just do that extra 10% at the back to see out the game, as we talked about with Bournemouth, which makes a massive difference. Other teams in the league need a clean sheet every 4 games, or that's what they get. So we should be doing the same. There's not many ways to approach the Premier League without starting from a solid defensive base, really. So I tried to look at the back three, but I can't really make it work, because I think to get at Southampton, you need Elanga and Hudson-Odoi. And I would probably, if he's fit enough, I would go with Taiwo over Chris Wood, because I think our game plan is let them have the possession, let them play sideways in front of in the middle of the pitch, in front of the penalty area, send them down a channel into a dead end, get the ball to Gibbs White, and him feed one of those front three who are bursting forward, and let the front three, can't say it, let the front three just do it one-on-one, because they're better players. They've got the physicality, they've got the pace, and with Taiwo you've got the strength. That just let those front three dominate the Southampton defence, because as pointed out, they've not got a good defence. They're not a strong defence. So I think that's how I'd go for it. More of a counter-attacking setup, because Southampton are going to want the ball anyway.
I'm not sure I can make a case for a back three, if I'm honest with you. I hear what you're saying, and I'm not sure that I can make a case for Taiwo Awoniyi starting either, especially with Wood scoring the goal last week. To take him out of the team after he scored the goal last week, I just can't see Nuno doing that. I hear what you're saying, and I think that.
I don't. Don't expect Nuno to do it.
No, but I guess I'm just trying to mix up what I would do and what I expect Nuno to do. Do we think Milenkovic will start? I think he'll stick with Bolly. I think again, the fact that he hasn't done anything wrong and he still is a very good player. Or is it that Milenkovic has been brought in to be his starting centre back alongside Murillo? And literally the only reason he didn't play last week, as we know, is because he had that suspension carried over from Italy. And now we think he's free of that. I mean, I think it was a one-game suspension. Let's assume it was a one-game suspension. Is it going to be that's it? Nuno's going to put him straight back in and say, look, I brought you in to start. I want you in as soon as you're physically able to be playing for us. So, that could be the one position where we do see a change. Although, like I said, I expect Richard, the team to be exactly the same as last week, albeit Yates to start for Danilo. And it's an away game as well. So even more reason for Ryan Yates to start and come into that starting 11. How do you see it, Richard?
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with all that. I do believe that Milenkovic is the starter. I generally got the sense that the suspension was strictly the variable that kept him off the pitch. My sense is, and I think Raph probably agrees with me, because I think he mentioned this as well. When Taiwo came on, so the dynamic shifted and we got a little bit more energy. We got better link-up play. Wood is brilliant in the box, clearly. And as you stated, Greg, it's kind of difficult to drop somebody to a substitute when he just scored a goal. But I think Taiwo has goals in him. Obviously, the health is always the factor. But his overall game, to me, is better suited. I think is better than Woods. And I'd be interested to see if we could what that would do for us in terms of increasing our potential goal output. Watching him play, I mean, his link up play where he can hold the ball and drop it off to Callum Hudson-Odoi or to Morgan. It's just a little bit more refined, I think, and his touch is better in my mind than Woods. So I'm personally thinking, and I'm probably completely wrong, that I would. It seems like it'd be a good game for us to get Taiwo in, because I think he would absolutely be a nightmare for that defense. And so I hope that we do that, because at some point, they clearly know where he's at with his health. So that may very well be the reason he's not on the pitch and wasn't on for more minutes last week. But I could see him pretty much keeping the side intact, but giving Taiwo an opportunity in this game, and then bringing Wood on later if a goal hasn't come. But at some point, we've got to see what he can offer us, because until we actually get somebody else through the door, we need him to get meaningful minutes, and we need him to get game shape ready, for what we're going to need him for down the line, assuming we don't get a Jimenez or we don't get into Nketiah, before the end of this window. So I completely agree with everything you guys have said. I personally would have been, not that Nuno cares what I think, but I personally would put Taiwo in there. I think this is a great game for him to do that. I mean, yeah.
I mean, hard to disagree. I mean, I think everything you said is bang on. I mean, if we get the Taiwo I want you playing that we know, then 100% everything you said. I mean, I know Chris Wood last week scored the goal, but beyond that, he was getting a little bit of flack for perhaps not being as involved or making the passes that he should have done. And his all-round game still needed work. But I think that first away game of the season could be a little bit physical. How fit is Taiwo? He's building minutes up still to a certain degree, I'd imagine. Him starting, he could come in and start and go off after 60. I think it's more likely that Wood would start and go off after 60, and Taiwo gets more minutes off the bench. Maybe Taiwo's first start of the season is more likely to be a home game. But again, just kind of throwing everything into the mix. Either way, Wood or one you starting. I mean, I'm happy with either. If one of them's starting and one's off the bench, they both bring different things. They have both proven that they can score goals for us, and they're going to want to score. If Eddie Nketiah is coming, they're going to want to stake a claim. So ultimately, that's only good for competition and good for the team. I'm hoping that our wingers today will have a lot of play as well. I'm excited for Hudson-Odoi and Alanga, but I'm also excited to see Ramon Sosa, hopefully, if he gets a place on the bench. You know, he's been brought in to be a wing option. And obviously we know Jota Silva as well. Maybe only one of them will make the bench today. We'll see. But certainly, if we're going to play wide and use the width of the pitch, playing with the back four, rather than having those wingers, wing backs rather, overlapping, then our game is built around Morgan feeding it out to Alanga and Hudson-Odoi, and obviously the link-up play with those three. So I'm hoping that we can definitely see some action down the wings. Score predictions. I know it's always difficult. I know that we, in our prediction, Dan, I think we had this one down as a Forest win. So it's the away game, first away win of the season. You know, I think we broke the away thing a little bit with the back-to-back wins at the end of last season, albeit against Burnley and Sheffield United, who ended up getting relegated. But I'm kind of looking at this Southampton game as almost kind of like for that Sheffield United away game. You know, they may well pose the same kind of threats. They've got Brereton Diaz playing as well. They may pose the same kind of threats. I mean, Sheffield United last term had some very good chances. Sells had a good game that time. How do you see this one panning out today, Dan?
Yeah, I still want us to win it. I still wouldn't accept a point before the game, you know, again with this one, because I think there's a way to win this game. We've got the players to win this game. So then it's just about the moments on the pitch, getting those right, because, you know, one-on-one, we've got the players to do it. Obviously, we've said that Southampton don't have a great defence. We've said that we're vulnerable. We haven't kept a clean sheet for however long. So realistically, both teams score, I think, like the Sheffield United game, as you mentioned, where it was 3-1, I think, wasn't it? So, yeah, I think we win it 2 or 3-1. I'll go with 2-1 just because it's early in the season. We're still kind of warming up.
Richard, I mean, I'm still really hoping that we can get that clean sheet today. How do you see it turning out today, buddy?
Yeah, I'm thinking 2-1 as well, because as much as I would love the clean sheet, just like Dan said, it's been a ridiculous amount of time since we've gotten one. I just don't see it happening. And I apologize, guys. I just realized I have to go. We have to be out by 11 o'clock at the Airbnb. So sorry about that. I didn't realize that. My brother's just messaging me. So sorry to cut it off and to interrupt what you guys are doing. But yeah, but pleasure as always. Blessing to see you guys. Yeah, 2-1 win.
Yeah,
Forest,
2-1
3 points.
Well, we'll let you go, Richard, so you can get out of that Airbnb, and yeah, we'll catch up later, and obviously we'll be chatting through the game, etc. So, all right, Richard, I'll let you remove yourself, and we'll speak to you later, buddy. All right.
All right. Thanks, guys. See you later.
See ya.
So we are practically at the end. Yeah. I think we will get the win today. I mean, again, I'm always going to back us to win. It wouldn't surprise me to get another 1-1 draw, but I'm really hopeful that, you know, we can really go all out. I'm hoping for 2-0. I'm thinking that it's well within our powers to do that. I think it's too early to start mixing the team up too much. So I expect it to be, as I said, pretty much the same 11, albeit Yates for Danilo, who we know is out probably for the season. So hopefully our first trip away from the City ground will give us some points today. All right, so we're at the end. I want to have a quick chat or quick mention that we have put out a fantasy football league as well. And so I was looking through after the first game as to how everyone's doing. So thank you very much for everyone who's joining in with the Talking Reds FPL league. I was going to give Richard a little bit of a grilling because we've got 41 entrants and Richard's sitting at number 40th at the moment. So this is his first time playing, and fair enough, he's obviously been coming over from the States. So Richard is sitting more or less in the relegation zone. I'm quite pleased at the moment. I mean, again, I was away and kind of focusing on other things, but I'm at 16th. My son Orlando, he's only 7, but he's got a team this year for the first time. He's one below me as well. So moving up, I think Raf's just below me in 23rd on 54 points. And then we go up a bit more. Paul Morley, who's going to be coming and doing a few contributor moments for us along the season. He's doing okay in 12 from 65, but leading the way, Dan, Bolly, up in seventh. Not a bad start to the season for you on 74. Shout out to Josh Richards, I beg your pardon. Wallow Wanderers, who's sitting top of the table on 84 points at the moment. So, how do you go about picking your team, Dan, when it comes to FPL?
I accidentally kind of paid too much attention to a few tweets on Twitter, so then I suddenly got bombarded in my feed with every account that ends, every username that ends FPL, saying share your this, share your that. So in the end, I'd ended up seeing loads and loads of options and loads of theories on this, that, and the other. I still kind of went with a little bit of gut feel at the end with putting Gibbs White in and stuff like that. A bit of obviously wanting a Forest player in there who's going to give us some points. So it was kind of a mix of that. But what I would say is I've taken a massive gamble for this weekend, and I've played the free hit option already. Well, I had Solanke up front, and I had Tarkowski and Everton. I think he's injured. And then a couple of the other games I was like, I'm not sure about. So I thought, right, I do want Haaland for Ipswich, obviously. I was thinking, right, I want him in. I want to deal with a couple of other issues. So I'm just going to play it early and hopefully get a big score this week. And yeah, that's my downfall, is like I'm too impulsive with stuff. I like to just get it out of the way.
Yeah, I had Solanke, but I mean, I think I just subbed him out while he's on the bench. I benched him. I haven't got Haaland. I've captained Salah again because he was my saving grace last week with points. So he kind of kept me sort of in with it a bit. But no, I got quite into it the last couple of seasons. So we'll keep an eye on FPL and update as we go along. You can still join if you want to go to the Talking Reds Twitter page. I think I've pinned it. The code is there. If you want to jump in still, please do come and join us. Also to say as well that I will be going to the Wolves match, and Richard will be going to the Wolves match next Saturday. We've managed to get tickets. Thank you so much for assistance from the ticket office with that. We've got memberships, but obviously with Richard coming over for the first time in, like I said, 33 years, it's going to be Richard's first visit to the City Ground in all that time. So getting to a game for him was going to be crucial. So I'm coming up with my son, and Richard's going to be with his brother. We'll be sat together. We're going to be in the Trent navigation before the match. Dan, I think you're coming over as well. Raf's coming up. So the Trent navigation is obviously the meeting place for a lot of the Forest Focus guys who we love still. And we're a big part of watching Forest Focus. So we're going to be in the Trent navigation before the match. And so if anybody's around, can come and say hi, can come and grab a quick chat. We'd love to say hello to anybody and everybody. So up next Saturday for the Wolves game, and can't wait for that. Dan and I got the memo about wearing the away kit. Richard is still in this suitcase, but just quickly before we go, the third kit kind of came out yesterday under the radar. Man City-esque. What do you think of the third kit?
Yeah, it's very low key. It's a low key option. I think it's one of them. In 20 years' time, people are like, "Do we have that as a kit?" Someone will pull it out. It's kind of you can wear it more casually. I kind of like that, but it's a little bit too close to the goalkeeper kit for my liking.
It's a bit too much of a Man City kit for my liking. I mean, I am a kit person. I am a shirt person. I know I'm sad. I'm nearly 50 and I wear shirts. I don't care. I think they're great. I will buy it, but it will be one that I possibly will wait for the sale to happen rather than go and buy. And what I would say as well, I'd never encourage anybody to go and buy one of the dupe copies from DHgate. But if ever there was a shirt that could be easily copied into probably the best copy you've ever had, then I think this third shirt is it. So they've made it really easy for the copiers to get one done. But listen, if you're still traveling to the game, or if you're watching it live, or however you're watching it today, then we're all plugging for a massive win for Forest. So enjoy the match, and we will hopefully be back soon. Not sure when that will be. I'll speak to the lads about when we can come back. But thanks for tuning in. Dan, thanks for coming on today, mate.
Yeah, good chat. Enjoyed it. Just looking forward to today's game now, and hopefully, the start of the season that we predicted.
Yeah, let's hope so. So thanks for joining us on Match Day Talking Reds. We'll see you next time.